Deuteronomy 28:68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way, wherefore I have spake unto thee, that thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Call Holo Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Achavodash. Double honors and salutations unto Yahweh, Wah Yahweh Shai, Wah, the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, the water for your diligence throughout all these years. Shalom to the 144,000 men pushing this truth at this very hour across the four corners of the globe. I am the brother Yazrael from the GMS Dallas camp, coming back at you with another lesson, Abaratazah, meaning Lord willing. In the ancient Paleo-Hebrew, it is edifying unto those who are meant to receive it. Okay, so I came across this lesson, or should I say, I began to put this lesson together the past couple of days, but what hit me through the spirit is last night I was watching the elder apostle Ramlan in a video that him and the beloved brother, the elder Kanat out in the West Coast was doing, and the name of the lesson I think was called They Shall Remember. And it was heavy because I came with this title, We Are Remembering, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. I had this title about 5 or 6 days ago, but I hadn't put together the lesson just of yet. So in watching the apostles' lesson last night with the elder Kanat, the spirit just kind of hit me to go ahead and kind of finish it, put it together. And it's just the spirit that he was going into the same thing that I initially wanted to go into. All right, so Abaratazah, this lesson is edifying. All right, and I brought out Deuteronomy 28 because we know that that verse there is kind of the kickoff, right? It's it's a marker, if you will, of giving the true understanding of who the true people are, right, in the Bible. Now, when you read Deuteronomy 28 from 1 to 15, as we know, are all of the blessings that Israel would have received had we been obedient and kept the laws and kept the covenant and not broken. All right, but from 16 to 68 are all of the curses that would come upon us if we were to be disobedient, which we did. Now, when you read the curses and you look out throughout the earth, through a process of elimination, you know that there's only one group of people that really fits these curses. All right, but within that, you know, you have to understand that, you know, from Egypt all the way up to today, it was an accumulation of multiple captivities. All right, hence the reason why I brought out the very last one here, Deuteronomy 28:68. All right, where it says we should be put on slave ships and brought here to the Americas. Okay, this is why the name of this lesson, We Are Remembering, is so important. Okay, remembering who we are, okay, why we came here and what happened to us as the people is very, very important. And this is what's causing great fear to fall on the nations. All right, so when you read 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3, it says, "And that day shall not come except there be a falling away first." All right, and that happened, as we know, in 70 AD when we were exiled out of our homeland of Israel, escaping Roman persecution. We hid into the interiors of Africa, Asia, India, Europe, right? And we were later rounded up in the west coast of Africa. Now, we know that this was chiefly the southern kingdom, all right, Benjamin, Judah, and Levi, even though that there were a certain number of the northern kingdom that was with us during that time. Because we know the northern kingdom was exiled out of Israel around 720 or 722, all right, by the Assyrians. Now, as we like to mention, you know, the education system here in America always says that Europe was an uninhabitable region known as the Dark Ages, all right, for roughly about 1,000 years. Now, we know that not to be true, all right? Why? Because we're remembering, all right? We ruled Europe, right, under the Byzantine Empire, okay? And this is stuff that's not taught in your school systems today, all right? When you have a true understanding, when you remember, all right, who we are and the greatness who we are as a people, all right, it'll help confirm who we are as a nation. All right, King James fought against the RCC, which is the Roman Catholic Church, all right, and make no mistake about it, he was not a homosexual. That was to discredit him, all right? He was a very, very intelligent man, fluent in Greek, Italian, French, Latin, all right, just to name a few, all right? And when you have understanding of that land period at that time, the people, all right, the British, the France, the Spain, the England, they were all people of dark skin descent, okay? And this is recorded in history, All right, so you have to understand when Esau, Edom, or the Edomites invaded the land back then, this was around what, 449, 438 AD, because before then, Edomites had never been in that land. All right, and they were known or said to be a warlike people. All right, so when you look at, you know, the Welshmen, the British, the Irish, right, the French, the Russians, the Germans, the Italians, the Swedes of ancient Europe, they were all dark-skinned people, all right, who inhabited that land for 1,000 years before the Edomites came. Okay, and this was even proven in the writings of, what's his name, Professor Boyd Dawkins, all right? And this was in, I want to say, around 1878 or 1879. He was invited to speak in public, right, to the Hall of Manchester in London, all right? And he spoke about these things, okay? And all this is within secular history, okay? King George II, who was a Jake, who was an Israelite, all right? Roman and German king that sat on the throne of England in the 1700s. Okay, all this is stuff that you can Google. Okay, we were known then in Europe as the Jacobites. Okay, also the Iberians, which goes back to Iber or Eber, which goes back to what? Hebrew. Okay, so the Jacobites, all right, of Europe, King James, okay? James actually meaning Jacob, all right? The sixth, all right, of Great Britain, Ireland, France, all right? He was the first ever to sit on 3 different thrones at one time, which was England, Scotland, Ireland. Okay, so understanding that, you know, our history is of the utmost importance. And without knowing or not remembering, okay, it's easier for us to fall into decay and to continually repeat the same things that we have been repeating, because why? We don't know who we are. Okay? And that's what's important. Slovakia. King James was also the first king to ever sit on 3 different thrones, all right, as I mentioned, and he was fighting politically the RCC, okay, and he was protecting the Zionism, right, during the time of his rule, all right. He was responsible for Great Britain, all right, because before then it was called what? The Britannica, all right. So you have to truly understand, you know, us remembering who we are as a people, it destroys the myth, the lies, the veil, the covering, all right, that has painted us to be this wicked people, all right? Greatness follows us as a nation, and that's one thing that we have to understand. Every place we have sojourned or been in captivity become great. When you look at Egypt, Egypt became great. Why? Because we were there. Europe, Rome, Greece, they became great. Why? Because we were there. America today has become great. Why? Because we are here. You see? But if you don't remember these things, all right, you will never know. Okay? So I didn't mean to go into, I just want to kind of give you some history, okay, to why remembering who you are is so important. So when we go back to the fall of Rome, all right, it was the Western Roman Empire that fell in 476 AD under Romulus and Augustus. All right, it was the Eastern Empire, aka the Byzantine Empire, that remained. And that's where we were in rulership for 1,000 years. All right, all the way up to, I want to say, maybe the mid 1400s. All right. So before then, that's when the beast, the first beast, all right, began to pretty much come back in power. All right, from 476 to about the mid 1400s. All right, and this was prophesied to happen in Revelations 20:3, when it talks about he must be loosened that little season. What is that talking about? That's talking about bringing forth what? The Renaissance era. Renaissance, meaning back, and naissance, meaning birth, the rebirth, right? The healing of the wound, all right, when the Roman Empire was brought down, should I say, and now revised. Okay, and that started through who? The Spaniards, right? Christopher Columbus, Queen Isabella, along with King Ferdinand of Spain, right? Pope Alexander VI, Rodriguez, and Caesar Borgia, right? Ultimately coming all the way over here to America, okay, in the late 1400s or so, right? So it was the Southern Kingdom of Judah, pretty much, that started going on slave ships as early as the 1500s, when you actually have the understanding and you actually do the research, right? And was brought here to America, right? As we previously mentioned here, all right, in Deuteronomy 28:68. All this happened due to what? Idolatry. Idolatry, okay? That's been the main source on why we are in this position to this very day. Idolatry. Okay, and as long as we stay in this condition or stay practicing idolatry, we will remain in this condition. All right. And that's something our people, at least a number of people, still can't get away from. All right, it was Wisdom of Solomon 14:12 says, "For the devising of idols was the beginning of spiritual fornication, and the invention of them the corruption of life." You see? So we fell as a nation, all right? And all throughout history, when you look back, all right, we look at, like, let's say the book of Judith, all right, the 5th chapter. As a matter of fact, I was reading it just the other night, all right? And there's an Assyrian general by the name of Holofernes, all right, who came and he attempted to what? He attempted to conquer us, all right? It was one of his men by the name of, I think it was Achor, all right, who basically warned him of what would happen, all right, if we as a nation became or were obedient during that time to the Lord, that they would be destroyed, and any nation coming up against us would be destroyed, right? But he also told him in turn that if we were disobedient, all right, or found to go off, found to be in idolatry or wickedness, right, that we would fall away and we would be conquered. Okay, matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and read it really quick here. I'm going to grab it in the GNT. I'm going to get straight to the point. And this is Judith 5:20 and 21 in the GNT. "Sir, if these people are now sinning against their power, even unknowingly, and if we can be sure that they are guilty of some offenses, we can successfully attack them." Okay? But it goes on to say, "But if they have not disobeyed the law of their power, then we should leave them alone, or he will defend them, and he will disgrace us before the world." You see that? So this has always been our number one issue as a nation. Hence the reason why we don't remember today. Okay, all the hell we went through throughout all the years, all right, from Egypt all the way up to this very day, is because of disobedience. All right, and the nations bank on this. All right, hence why our history's been covered up. It's been erased. It's been deleted. All right, of who we are as a people. Okay, Psalms 83. Matter of fact, let me grab that. This is Psalms 83:3. "They have taken," matter of fact, I'll bring it up here on the screen too. I'm going to try and remember so you can follow along for those of you who don't have your swords, which you should have at this point that we're in right now, so you know that these aren't our vain words or opinion, but the actual oracles of the Heavenly Father. Start right here, Psalms 3. It says, "They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones." Who are the hidden ones? We are. Okay? Goes on to say, "They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation." Here's the point. "That the name of Israel may no more be in remembrance." You see, and that's what's happened all the way up to this day. Right? But call Holo Yahabashim Yasha, the Lord has sent his spirit back down, right? That latter rain, putting us back in pure remembrance, though we once knew this, Jude 1:5. Okay? It is this word that's being spoken that's turning the world upside down today. Why? Because we're remembering. It's this word that the nations are rising up, all right, and preparing for World War III. Why? Because we are remembering. You see? It's because let me close this here. It's because this word is going out throughout the four corners of the earth that the people and nations are now in fear. All right? Matter of fact, let me grab this Revelations 11. I have it here, but I'm going to bring it up on the screen as well. Revelations 11. Let's get straight to the point here. 11:11. And it goes on to say, "And after 3 days and a half, 3 days and a half meaning 350 years, going back to Deuteronomy 28:68. Okay, we were brought here roughly around 1619. Okay, and the Spirit came back onto us via our forefathers. All right, starting with the beloved Abba Bivens. All right, and it says, after 3 days and a half, the Spirit of life from Yahweh Shem Yahshai entered into them, which is what causing us to remember. And they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them." Why? Because just as Holofernes, all right, the Assyrian general, was warned, if we turn back onto our power, it's all over. And that's what's happening. All right, it's being a reoccurring theme all throughout the scriptures. Okay, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna go up here in 9. And it says what? And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies, right? And this specific verse is talking about all the other heathen nations. Shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. What does that mean? When you're in a grave, meaning you're at peace, you're at rest. But see, they refuse to tell us who we are, what our true identity is, why we're going through all this hell, why we've been catching all this hell, what we need to do to get out of it. You see that? These answers give us rest. 2 Thessalonians 1:7. All who you are troubled, rest with us. Remembering who we are brings us comfort, but it brings fear onto them. Okay, so all throughout history, this was done unto us to turn us from our power. All right, when you look at the Greek captivity under Antiochus Epiphanes, it was an actual law that was made that we should discontinue from our heritage. Matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and get it. Let me see if I can bring it up here as well. Let me see. What is it in Second Maccabees? I don't think it's that book. Grab this here, Slovakia. It's the Gateway, I believe it is. Grab that. But of course this keeps popping up here, getting in the way. But this is all written in the Apocrypha, and the Apocrypha literally is translated as the hidden, right? Because these epistles were hidden from us. The RCC took them out and said they weren't canonical. Well, who are you to decide what is and what isn't canonical according to our history? You see? But of course, we know all this was done by design, right? Let me see here. KJV, right here. Let's get it. All right, we'll go down here to 2 Maccabees 6. Six and 6. All right. We'll just start there at 6 and 6, and it says, neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. You see, so why was this so important that we turn away from our power? All the other heathen nations round about were able to worship their power without any hindrance. But we, as Israel, as a specific people, are forced not to call ourselves Jews, to teach our children to do so, and to go by the name of the Grecians. Hence Galatians 3:28, neither Jew nor Greek. It's because we were the same people. Those who knew still who they were, being Jews, and those who didn't, by way of Hellenization. You see? Goes on to say here. Back. Let's read down here a bit. Goes on here to say in 7, and in the day of the king's birthday, every month they were brought to bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. Right. They made us go off eating pork, swine's flesh. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were forced to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. See, again, forcing us to turn away from our power, just like the Assyrian general was told, Holofernes. You see? Letting you know what? They have always known, keeping us from our remembrance. Psalms 83, that the name of Israel may no more be in remembrance, is of the utmost importance to the heathen nations, starting with Esau, Edom. Goes on to say, and we'll get straight here to the point. Moreover, there went out a decree. What's a decree? A decree to the neighboring cities of the heathens by the suggestion of Ptolemy's against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashion and be partakers of their sacrifices. Right. Translating, when you translate that, forcing us to turn against the Lord. You see the connection? Maccabees 6 and 9, down here. And whosoever would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death. Then might a man have seen his present misery. You see that? So it was forth by way of death for us to turn away from our power. Why is that so important? As I said, all the other nations were free to worship their power and their gods. But for some reason, we were not supposed to. We could not. And if we were attempted to or had attempted to, we were put to death. The following verse gives an example here. It says, there were two women brought who had circumcised their children, right? Because we know circumcision is of the law. When whom they had openly led about the city their babes, handing them at their breasts. This is what happened. They cast them down headlong from the wall. Killed them. Because they were circumcised. You see, so when you look at the history, especially in the Greek captivity, hence the reason why you won't find it in the regular KJV. They removed that for a reason. So after 200 or 300 years of this treatment being in the Greek captivity, your offspring are going to what? They're going to forget who they are. You see that? So as we sat and watched all the heathens round about, the heathen nations round about us prosper in wealth and riches, their community grew, just as in 2nd Esdras. All right, when you read about that, and I think it was in the 3rd chapter, when he was in the Babylonian Empire, he was grieved. Why? Because he watched the heathens prosper and become rich while we were in a low state. The same thing as today. It's not about putting together some so-called black wealth. That black culture is just another idol. All right? That's gotten us where we are here today. It's all about remembering and returning. You see? So it's grievous, and it was grievous unto them until the Lord sit down that latter rain. Psalm 73 and 15. Matter of fact, I'll pull it up here as well. So you can follow along. This lesson won't be too much more longer. Just want to get to the points here. I want to say it's down in 15 and 16. Yeah. Psalm 73, 15. If I say I will speak thus, behold, I shall offend against the generation of thy children. Right? Because we know ultimately this truth is offensive even to 2/3 of Jake, because they have partaken onto this man's ways. Just like in the ancient captivities of all of the nations that we were sojourned in, there was always a set number of Israelites that were going to sojourn onto them and partake happily and willfully, okay, in the practices and customs of the heathen nations. But the Lord always left that remnant, that small remnant of seed, okay, that will always remember, okay, and that's what's happening. Psalm 73 and 16. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me, right? Because this is what Esdras was seeing. This is what we've been seeing, okay? When we see the prosper of the nations, right? And we understand this truth now. It goes on to say, until I went into the sanctuary of Yahweh Shema Shai, then understood I their end. You see that? So we understood that there's 2/3 of Jake that aren't going to get it and they're going to be destroyed. We understand that these nations are going to get their due recompense. That sanctuary, meaning this truth, all right, we have returned unto it. We are remembering, and now we understand everything of what we went through and why. And as I said, also, what we truly have to understand is that their end of their rulership, us remembering, means their end. And this is why they are in fear, right? And we even have to this day where people complain and they say, you know, that we aren't the people of the book, even asking, how do you guys know, right, that you are the children of Israel? How can you prove that? Well, not only the scriptures prove it, but the Spirit itself bears witness. As a matter of fact, let me grab this in Romans 8. And 16, there it is. What does that say? It's the Spirit bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah. You see that? So what I did here, I had pulled up here, I went into the etymology, because that's that extra oil that was given on to the elect of Israel to go into the etymology of words and to break things down to make them plain unto angels. All right, so I went into this word witness here. The word witness, when you look at it, it's heavy. It says a personal knowledge, a martyr, to see, to know. Okay, it says to establish its identity, right? So the Spirit bears witness, right? The Spirit meaning the Lord. The Lord's Spirit establishes his identity with our spirit. You see, if you can receive it. Okay, goes on to say the Greek word is sometimes said to be related to memora, care, trouble, source of Sanskrit. Sanskrit is basically an ancient language of the Elamites. Okay, but it goes on to say samarati. Samarati means what? To remember. Latin, memor, mindful. For censor, shift for abstract, testimony. A witness, says, compares to the French word témoin, which means witness. Now we know wit itself, when you break down witness, wit is to see, metaphorically to know, to be wise. You see? So this Spirit bears witness. The Spirit of the Lord bears witness with our spirit, which is that wisdom, all right, which we know having that testimony, all going into the word wisdom, is going to cause us to be what? Martyrs, all going into the word witness, as you see right here. This is why this is so heavy. As a matter of fact, here, I want to go into, I want to read something here. This is Romans 8. This is the commentary. One of the many that I like to go into is Gill's, but I like to go into Guzik, Cambridge, right? But I thought that this was really heavy what he went into here. I'm going to read it. This is the Spirit bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua. The Spirit itself bear witness. The thing which the Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua witnesses to is, right, what I just broke down in the etymology. The Lord's Spirit witnesses unto our spirit. It says that we are the sons of God. Goes on to say, which suppose this case in some sense doubtful and uncertain, at least that it is called in question. Not by others, though it sometimes is, as Satan, which need not seem strange, since he called in question the sonship of Yahweh Shah. Right, Yahweh Shah. When Yahweh Shah was on the mountain, all right, and Satan was tempting him, questioning whether, making him question, trying to get him to question whether or not he was the son of the Heavenly Father. Goes on to say, and by the world who knew them not, and by good men until better informed. But the testimony of the Spirit is not the satisfaction of others, but the saints themselves, who are ready to doubt if at time, because why? Because of the greatness of the favor and their own sinful and unworthiness, right? We know that we're not worthy. This flesh, this sinful flesh, causes us to go off. All right, so it says in doubt, because we know in doubt is a demon. And you only doubt when we are in this flesh, if you follow me. Goes on to say, especially after backsliding, which we did, by way of what? Idolatry. We went over that in the very beginning, right? It says, through the temptation of the devil, and because of their many trials and afflictions, goes on to say, now this witness of the Spirit is established and confirmed it, has established and confirmed it, not to make it a thing itself sure, for that stands on the sure foundation of predestination, right? Going back to what I just said, there's always been a number, all right, a remnant that the Lord would always keep and reserve since the very beginning, before the foundations of the earth were created. And each and every time we were brought here, all right, each and every time that we came back, right, the Spirit, Salakia, reincarnation is biblical. Scripture says the spirit of the prophets are subject to the prophets. So each and every time we regenerate and we come back, it is brought back to our remembrance. Being predestined, okay? It says predestined on the unalterable covenant of grace. on union of Yahweh Hashem Yahshua, redemption by him, the gift of Yahweh Hashem Yahshua's continuance of the saints, but to assume them of it, and of their interest, for the testimony is given to our spirit, so that the words are ready. Goes down here saying, this is where it got really interesting, and it says, with our spirits, okay, because up here it says that we are the sons of the power, okay, the Spirit bears witness with our spirits, and it says, for our own spirits are no witness to ourselves. The Father and the Son, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, are co-witnesses of the Spirit, right? Remember, going back to, as we brought out here in the etymology, the Spirit of the Lord witnesses unto our spirit. You see, it goes on to says, but not to our own spirits. The spirits of the saints are they which receive the witness of the Spirit of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, to which it is made. Here's the point. Not to their ears, for it is not an audible testimony, but to their hearts, right? Our mind, our spirit, you see? Internal, it says, to their renewed souls, where faith is wrought to receive it, to their understanding that they may know and be assured of it. Their spirits which are apt to faint, and doubt about, but now this Spirit itself bears witness, and of not others by others, but he himself in person. You see that? Who is a divine witness. Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua's Spirit bears witness, not to us in the flesh, but in the Spirit. This is why we are reborn onto the Spirit. And it's the Spirit that brings us back to remembrance of who we are. Goes on to say, so whose testimony therefore must be greater than others. Right. So it doesn't matter what these other people say. How do you guys know? It's a spiritual thing. It's nothing carnal. The Spirit of the Lord has to connect or touch with our spirits, and that activates us. You see? And a faithful one who will never deceive, for he witnesses what he knows and what is sure and certain. His very being and habitation in the saints are witnesses and proof of their adoption. Romans 9:4. You see that? So there's no way around it. This is the beauty and understanding of why remembering is so important. Why Yahweh Hashem Yahushua is so important. Why his sacrifice was so important. You see? It's Romans 9:28. Let's grab this. Salakia 26. And here it is. And it shall come to pass that in the place, what place? Here in America, where it is said unto them, ye are not my people, there they should be called the children of the living power. Yasharallah, princes of the power, the real people of the book. Why? Because we are remembering. You see? The same thing that we were told we are not here in captivity, we are remembering. Going back to that fear. See, because you have to understand, the nations have never heard the Bible being broken down like this, all right? Never being made to be made sense unto them in such a way that they can't come against it. Okay, they've never heard these things broken down in this manner, and this picture painted so vividly. Okay? Because understand something, as much as they talk crazy, and even the 2/3, at the end of the day, in the back of their mind, make no mistake about it, they're saying, what if what these people are saying is actually true? And that's where the fear lies. That right there is where the fear lies. You see, so when we read back at 2 Thessalonians 2:3, let no man deceive you by any means, because we were deceived by way of our own actions, let alone the nations, right? It says, for that day shall not come except there be a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. That falling away, meaning falling away from our heritage, our identity. All right, we went over that in the earlier the chapter. All right, who we are as a people. All right. And we're in that day right now where we are remembering who we are as a people and able to reveal the man of sin with this testimony, the self-proclaimed white man. And this is where that fear comes from. It's all about remembering. Why do you think they always say, man, you guys get over it? You guys talk about slavery rule, get over it. Why do you think they say that? Look at things through the Spirit. That's always been said to us, and only us, no other nation. You guys need to get over it, because remembering brings fear. You see, Judges 5:11. And they that are delivered from the noise of the archers in the place of drawn waters, there they shall rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord, even the righteous act towards the inhabitants of the villages in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down to the gates. Right. Delivered from the noise of the archers, meaning delivered from the ICBM missiles, the destruction that's going to take place here, because that's also tied to that fear these nations are seeing. Because not only are we waking up and coming back into the power, all right, but we're also telling them of their judgment. We're also telling them of their judgment of their last kingdom and how they're going to be burnt up. All right. America is the lake of fire. Okay. So it says, in that place of drawn waters here in America, meaning captivity, rehearsing the righteous acts. How? How are we rehearsing the righteous acts? By way of remembrance. You see? So that's why I titled this lesson overall, We Are Remembering, and great fear fell upon them that saw us. All right, so I think the point was made. I want to give all honors and praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Chakodash. Double honors unto the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom.